Welcome to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe in the studios of our flagship station, Civic Center TV and 89.3 Lakes FM. Civic Center TV is on Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Channel 99, in addition to our friends over in Birmingham and the Bloomfield area on Birmingham Area Municipal Access, and our friends in Southfield on City Cable 15 of Southfield. Join us also on Channel 10 in Waterford on the media network of Waterford, and in Orion Township and Lake Orion, where living is a vacation, on Orion Neighborhood Television, otherwise known as ONTV. You can find us online as well on the web at civiccentertv.com. Click on our Watch Live link or go to our Facebook pages, facebook.com/civiccentertv15 and facebook.com/lakesfm. You can also find us on the radio in the Birmingham, Bloomfield, and Troy areas on 88.1 The Biff, a service of the Bloomfield Hills School District with operations out of Bloomfield Hills High School over there on Long Lake Road, just before Telegraph in Bloomfield Hills. Find us also on the web as well as on your smartphone and your smart TV on My Michigan TV, otherwise known as MyMy. Visit mymytv.com. That's MYMITV.com to learn more information. Find us live Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Live to tape as well on their channel for replays on demand, with many of our segments and full episodes over there on mymytv.com. And of course, learn more information on how you can subscribe for free and download both their smart TV and smartphone apps for free as well, and take My Michigan TV with you on the road all across the Great Lakes state, around the U.S. and around the world. mymytv.com, or visit our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where we have links to every single one of our partnering television, radio, and web outlets, so you can learn more information about other great community programming here in the Oakland County area, all across the state of Michigan as well, and find all of our full episodes and each individual interview from our show on demand. They're usually posted on our website sometime mid to late afternoon every day. And you'll be able to find our episodes live to tape over there in case you're not able to join us for the full 2 hours, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. until 12 noon, or if you only want to see specific interviews that are related to your community or to a topic of interest to yourself and your family. Also highly suggest you go to civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, where at the top of the page we have links that direct you straight to the COVID-19 specific web pages of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and the Oakland County Health Division, so that at each level, local, statewide, and federally, you can keep up to date on everything you need to know on COVID-19 as the case numbers are continuing to drop down from this big surge we had with the Omicron variant over the past couple months as we finished 2021 and began 2022. Where we're going to go forward from here, other variants that are likely to pop up, maybe even other surges that could come in the future, hopefully not, but if they do come around, we'll learn about them first from the CDC, the MDHHS, and the Oakland County Health Division. A great place to start doing your own research, getting informed on all these different things we need to know about COVID-19 to stay safe during this pandemic, prevent the spread of COVID-19, and eventually get ourselves out of this great mess that we've been dealing with for almost 2 entire years at this point. Also on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, we have articles linked from across the state of Michigan from great journalistic outlets. Click on the article headline, click on the thumbnail picture just below the headline to go to these articles, read them in full. Yeah, most of these articles on our website are summarized or cut down for spacing and, of course, for time here, as this is only a 2-hour show and we need to get to our guests at the bottom of the hour as quickly and efficiently as possible. But we link to these articles so you can read supporting materials, so you can, of course, read their other articles. And should you have the means to do so, we highly, highly encourage you to subscribe to these publications and support local journalism all across the Great Lakes state. Our top headline today: Michigan's Senate has passed an income tax cut bill. However, its path forward is not quite clear. This is from our friends at Bridge, Michigan. Michigan Senate Republicans on Tuesday approved a $2 billion tax cut proposal that would lower both personal and corporate income tax rates and provide tax relief for senior citizens and children. The vote was split on party lines, 22-16. The Republican proposal, Senate Bill 768, would lower the state income tax rates to 3.9% from its current 4.25% for individuals and 6% for corporations. The plan would offer a $500 tax credit per child under the age of 19 as well. GOP lawmakers argued that the plan would bring tax relief for Michigan families as the state continues to recover from the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. All Senate Democrats opposed the measure, however, arguing it would further shift tax burdens from corporations onto regular taxpayers. The income tax savings for an individual making $70,000 per year would amount to about $228 per year if the plan passes. Tax cut fever is raging in Lansing as officials debate how to spend a $7 billion state revenue surplus and another $7 billion in federal stimulus funds. Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer has pitched smaller and targeted tax cuts as part of a massive $74.1 billion budget proposal that Republicans have criticized. What a surprise. And no surprise going the other way as well, as the Democrats in our state Senate altogether denying or opposing, not denying because they don't have the majority, opposing the tax cut proposals from the Republican counterparts. Continuing on, the Senate's proposal could face hiccups, however, in the House, which is also controlled by Republicans. Quote, the House is putting together its own proposal, said Gideon DeSandro, spokesperson for House Speaker Jason Wentworth, a Republican from Farwell. Quote, Speaker Wentworth would like to focus more on helping families and seniors who are struggling with ridiculously high inflation and the cost of living, end closed quote. House Appropriations Chairperson Thomas Albert, a Republican from Lowell, said he does not want to use federal stimulus funds to pay for any cuts because, quote, it's expressly not allowed, end closed quote, under the law approved last year by Congress. Albert anticipates the state can cut roughly $800 million, in annual tax collections and not run afoul of federal regulations, he said last week on WKAR TV, that's PBS of Lansing's Off the Record. But the House will still consider cuts, including income tax rate rollbacks, expansion of the personal exemption for individual tax deductions, property tax relief, and commercial personal property tax relief as well, according to Representative Albert. Quote, there's a lot of options on the table, he said. Whitmer, a Democrat who is up for re-election this November, could veto Republicans' plans and has proposed her own cuts. She wants to phase out what's known as the quote-unquote pension tax, a tiered system applying a 4.25% income tax on pensions depending on when the taxpayer is born, and to reverse a 2011 cut to the earned income tax credit for lower income workers. Quote, these are hardworking people who had the rug pulled out from under them when the previous administration raised taxes on Michiganders, end close quote. Governor Whitmer's spokesperson Bobby Letty said in a Tuesday statement, quote, we can start with making things right by eliminating the retirement tax to give seniors a much-needed break and cutting taxes for working families, end close quote. Whitmer's proposal was the following. Whitmer said last week she's open to negotiating tax policy with Republicans, but said her focus is, quote, on making our tax code more fair, end close quote. The governor has proposed doing so by reversing a pair of tax changes made in 2011 under then-Governor Rick Snyder and the Republican-led legislature. The first-term Democrat wants to repeal the pension tax, which expanded taxation of retirement income. She also wants to reverse a cut to the earned income tax credit for lower-income workers. Phasing out the so-called pension tax over the next 4 years, as Whitmer has proposed, would cost the state $13 million in the current tax year and $495 million annually by 2025, according to the Whitmer administration. The state budget office estimates that nearly 500,000 households would save an average of $1,000 if the state restores tax exemptions for retirement income, restoring the state's earned income tax credit to 20% of the federal level, up from the current 6%, would benefit an estimated 750,000 households, but cost the state a $262 million cost in revenue. Expanding the earned income tax credit for lower income workers to benefit an estimated 750,000 households, as Whitmer has also proposed, would cost an estimated $262 million in fiscal year 2023. Michigan is currently flush with federal stimulus funds, but the money comes with conditions. Congress specified that the American Rescue Plan Act funding cannot be used to offset tax cuts. Some states have sued over the restriction, and a federal judge in Alabama has called it unconstitutional. The Whitmer administration is wary of running afoul of the federal stimulus law law and wants to make sure Michigan is not required to pay back any funds because of misuse, said State Budget Director Chris Harkins. Whitmer's proposed tax cuts would be phased in and paid for by projected state revenue gains, according to Harkins, which means Michigan would need to use any federal stimulus funds to offset these changes. Quote, "We're comfortable that Whitmer's proposal does not cause any problems with requirements," and closed quote, of federal stimulus law, Harkins said last week. He also contended that any larger Republican tax cut proposals that would require the state to cut spending would be, quote, an area of concern, and closed quote, because of federal regulations. That full article from Bridge, Michigan, as well as supporting materials on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Also making headlines today. We are currently right back in the thick of things with a weather roller coaster, as it's being called by the Detroit News. Wind, warmth will turn to rain and snow very soon. This is, of course, as I said, from the Detroit News. A turbulent period of weather starts midday today, Wednesday, with windy and warm conditions eventually changing to rain and then snow through late Thursday. There are wind advisories, flood watches, and winter storm watches from the National Weather Service in effect for Wednesday and Thursday for central and southern Michigan. Uncertainty remains, according to the Weather Service, on when rain will change to snow and how much freezing rain and sleet could factor into weather conditions. Here's what to expect today on Wednesday. The forecast: warming temperatures and increasing wind for much of the day. The details in that forecast: southwest winds 15 to 25 miles per hour, with gusts up to 50 miles per hour are expected. Temperatures are expected to rise into the upper 40s and near the 50s in the local area. Advisories also in place. Wind advisories have been declared through Wednesday night for Midland, Bay, Huron, Saginaw, Tuscola, Sanilac, Shiawassee, Genesee, Lapeer, St. Clair, Livingston, Oakland, Macomb, Washtenaw, Wayne, Lenawee, and Monroe counties. Also under a wind advisory: Gratiot, Ionia, Clinton, Allegan, Barry, Eaton, Ingham, Van Buren, Kalamazoo, Calhoun, and Jackson counties. Again, Wednesday night forecast: rain will begin overnight and fall through Thursday morning. The details in that forecast: more than an inch of rain is expected. Excessive runoff may result in flooding of rivers, creeks, streams, and other low-lying and flood-prone locations. Advisories also in place there. Flooding caused by rain and snowmelt is possible in southeast Michigan, including in buckle up, Lenawee, Monroe, Macomb, Oakland, St. Clair, Washtenaw, and Wayne counties. The forecast for tomorrow on Thursday: as a cold front moves through, rain will change to snow through periods of freezing rain and sleet. Those are also expected. The forecast calls for 3 to 6 inches of snow for west, southwest, and southeast Michigan. More freezing rain and sleet could keep totals down, though up to 7 inches of snow could fall in southwest Michigan. A winter storm watch is in effect for all of the following on Thursday for Sanilac, Genesee, Lapeer, St. Clair, Livingston, Oakland, Macomb, Washtenaw, Wayne, Lenawee, Monroe, Eaton, Ingham, Van Buren, Kalamazoo, Calhoun, Jackson, Berrien, St. Joseph, Branch, and Hillsdale counties. Maybe next time we'll go through and just name the counties where there isn't an advisory and speed things up just a little bit. That full article from our friends at the Detroit News, as well as their continued updates and forecasts as we are coming into some unpredictable weather. Linked on our website, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Lastly, making headlines today. Good news for gamblers in the Metro Detroit area. If you don't like going to the casino with a mask on, Motor City Casino will be ending its COVID-19 mask mandate, but it's only for vaccinated guests. Beginning Thursday, vaccinated guests will no longer be required to wear masks at Motor City Casino. The casino hotel announced on Monday that its mask mandate is being lifted for those who are vaccinated, effective 8 a.m. on Thursday of this week. Masks will still be required for players and guests who have not completed vaccination. Motor City Casino is the first Detroit casino to announce an end to its mask mandate. The casino's announcement comes as the state is experiencing a decline in coronavirus cases. More information on coronavirus and other top stories affecting the state of Michigan on our website at civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. We have a great Wednesday edition of the Megacast coming up for you. Coming up next, we'll talk to Shandel Bronstein, the CEO of JARC, about the programs that are in place through that organization, helping people with disabilities in our local area. At 10:40, to cap off the Oakland County hour of the Megacast, we'll be joined by the founder of the Pontiac Community Foundation, also their CEO, Dustin McClellan, at 10:40. At 11 o'clock, the good Dr. Jamie Taweel, the internal medicine specialist from Grand River Medical Associates, will join us on the show with the changing conditions of the COVID-19 pandemic as we are into the thick of things in winter, and where we might be going forward with this COVID-19 situation as we're starting to see a little bit of a dip across the state of Michigan. That is coming up at 11 o'clock. At 11:20, Kurt Metzger, the former mayor of Pleasant Ridge and the founder of Data Driven Detroit, will join us to talk about a really interesting find that for the first time in the history, in the recorded history at least, of the state of Michigan, our population numbers, we recorded more deaths than we did births in 2020. He'll give some analysis on that and other information that they've collected and analyzed from the 2020 U.S. Census data, coming up at 11:20. At 11:40, Dr. Roberto Rinaldi, the Vice President of Clinical Integration at JVS and Kadima, will join us, and we'll talk about a topic that's become very close and dear to many people's hearts over the course of the pandemic, mental health. That's coming up at 11:40, and that's our show for today's edition of the Megacast. We'll return in just a few. Coming up next, Shandel Bronstein, the CEO of JARC. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Neighborhood storm drains carry water directly to local creeks and streams. No filters, no treatment.
Storm drains also help reduce street flooding when it rains.
So clearing storm drains and the areas nearby of trash and leaves helps keep them for rain only.
It is easy to do your part by adopting a storm drain.
Find a storm drain, check it, and clear it every month.
So keep storm drains for rain only.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit, or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM.
We as Michiganders feel connected to this resource in a way that I think is really powerful.
Conservation starts with a caring, committed community.
For me, it's peaceful to have a relationship with the river.
Every single one of us has a role to make sure that those waterways stay safe, healthy, being careful about what goes down the storm drain.
Just even eliminating some of your single-use plastic makes a difference.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Did you know that nearly 3.31 million Americans don't get their annual checkup? Going to the doctor regularly is extremely important and is a crucial factor in maintaining good health. Make sure you are visiting your local doctor often and telling them about any health concerns you have. For more information, contact your local healthcare provider. This message is brought to you by WBHS Digital Media Arts Program and 89.3 Lakes FM.
Joining us now is Shandel Bronstein. She is the CEO of JARC. Back with us once again on the Megacast. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate having you on. So for those that haven't seen you on with us before or haven't heard of your organization, tell us about JARC, kind of its origin story and its mission and some of the services that it provides to people here in our community.
Okay, JARC is actually finishing out its 52nd year of service in Metro Detroit, and we are a provider of residential services to adults with developmental disabilities and cognitive impairments. Our goal is to make sure that regardless of somebody's abilities, they're able to live their fullest life.
And so, how did you come to work for JARC, and what do you, from your experience as the CEO of this organization, believe is the greatest impact this organization makes on the lives of those that have these developmental disabilities and are needing to navigate what can often be a very difficult situation, trying to navigate living a regular life like you and I may live, albeit while also tackling an ongoing battle with the developmental disability that they have.
Right. So my background actually for the last 16 years has been in human service, and I was very focused in my career trajectory and ensuring that the work that I was doing was assisting persons who could otherwise become marginalized. And when the opportunity came up at JARC, that obviously completely fit the bill. And I would say really the area that we make the most difference, beyond, of course, basic needs and making sure that people have adequate housing and food and clothing and all the other things that we need, again, just to survive, is that we allow our people to really become their true selves. If somebody wants to explore an interest in music, we make that possible. We really look at every person through the lens of being the individuals that they are, and we don't see them, right, through the lens of their disability. We see them through the lens of their interests, of their passion, of their desires to be part of community and to make a difference. So I think that's really, again, where we make our mark.
We're joined by Shandel Bronstein, the CEO of JARC, joining us on the Megacast. And so you mentioned that these services that are being provided are helping to aid these individuals with developmental disabilities or impairments that may make everyday life and everyday things that we do or need to do in order to maintain our life much more difficult because of their situation. What are some of those services that are provided to help bridge those gaps by your organization? And how many people at this time are you serving?
Right, so we're serving about 135 individuals right now, and our settings range from small residences of 2 people up to 6-bedroom licensed adult foster care homes. And one of the things that we're doing, and we actually just received some funding from it, from the Donald Master Simon Foundation, which we learned during the time of COVID, when obviously so many things were shut down, for our people too, in order to keep them safe. They were really housebound. Going on right close to 2 years now, that so many activities are simply not available because of safety issues. Obviously, a number of our people have underlying health conditions that, make it very scary for them, again, to have COVID. And even with vaccinations, with recent surges, we've sort of had this push-pull. So one of the things that we noticed was that we really needed to find individualized activities that would allow people to pursue their interests, even if they weren't able to get out of the house, right, and go to supported employment, attend workshops, attend social programs that we normally would be out in the community attending. We really needed to figure out a way to bring that into our homes, certainly for the short term, and we're really looking at it and saying it's a wonderful long-term enhancement. So we now employ a recreation therapist who is working sometimes, again, one-on-one with one of our persons who may, again, be suffering, potentially from depression around isolation or anxiety around the pandemic and all those fears that we're all experiencing. And music, right, may be respite for them, or art, again, or card games, or organizing collections, really identifying what are the activities that this person is interested in and what can we do to help them build their skills and to, again, help keep spirits up and develop talents and experience joy. And we're doing that both in one-on-one settings, again, as well as within groups, within our homes, people who are living together.
And so we're joined by Shandel Bronstein, the CEO of JARC, on the Megacast. And just earlier this month, now it's February, so late last month, JARC received a $25,000 grant from the Donald R. and Esther Simon Foundation to support new therapeutic programs, particularly aimed at combating some of that isolation and depression that you talked about. That's commonplace with a lot of people with or without developmental disabilities, but can be especially important for maintaining some of that progress that these programs have provided over the long term and over the short term for these individuals that you serve as well. Can you tell us about the therapeutic program that this funding has been able to provide greater access to, and how difficult it would be without this kind of funding from these generous donors to be able to provide these programs to these individuals and continue that progress despite the challenges of this ongoing pandemic?
Absolutely. So, and you touched on it, right? This pandemic has been challenging for all of us, and we're all experiencing, right, this loneliness that, again, just seems to be going on and on and on. And many of us are able, right, to get on Zoom, right, to get on FaceTime, to use technology to engage with others. You can imagine if you were a person who, potentially does not communicate verbally, you have other forms of communication, and you're not comfortable with technology, what that isolation could do to you and really be compounded. So again, our program is allowing us to marry some of the online activities that we've undertaken, really, again, going on 2 years, with that personal one-on-one for people who need the human interaction, and the activities are very much person-centered. So again, if this is somebody who really needs to make sure that they're maintaining, again, their stability of balance, it may be playing a dancing game. If this is someone, again, who needs to make sure, right, that they're continuing, to use their hands for small movements, we might use musical instruments, right? We may use art. So it can really be anything, again, that is going to help that person to keep their skills sharp and also really allow them that human touch. We have a young man who we serve, and something that we discovered through this process, and this is someone who's been with us for a few years, and again was attending a workshop during the day. And this young man had a vocabulary that we thought was about 50 words. And something that was discovered through this process, again, of our recreation therapist working with him around his interest, he started to name animals. And she discovered that he wanted to tell her about his day at the zoo. And through this process, again, of interacting around this with some of the flashcards, again, and animal names, we discovered actually that his vocabulary, was 250 words and growing. We hadn't yet figured out the right way to hear him, right, to truly understand what he was trying to tell us. So you can imagine, again, beyond just the maintenance, it's really gratifying to see some of these leaps that our people are making, even though we're in less than ideal conditions right now.
We're joined by Shane Bronstein, the CEO of JARC, joining us on the Megacast. You can learn more information about the organization by visiting jarc.org. That is JARC or JARC.org to learn more information. And so, these programs, just that one success story, really shows how much these programs, these specific programs, these therapeutic programs, just how much of a benefit they can have in the lives of those that do have developmental disabilities or impairments. And so, Going back to just the general services that are provided by JARC, the primary funding source for long-term support for people with disabilities tends to be Medicaid, and that generally can cover about 80% of the basic necessities of their life, or 80% of total money that's needed for them to really live as normal of a life as possible. That other 20% can be really difficult for them to obtain for a number of different reasons outside of the fact that they're dealing with developmental disability or disorder. And so how does your organization, on top of these kinds of programs that are very specialized and are often specially funded, like they have been from this $25,000 grant, how do you help to bridge that gap with them? And just how important is community funding to providing the opportunities for you to bridge those gaps with as many people as possible?
Right. So community funding is huge. I mean, you said it. We tell people all the time, nobody wants to live an 80% life. And again, we're incredibly grateful and fortunate to be the beneficiaries, right, of the funding that comes through the Medicaid line. And that provides critical services to our folks. But the extra things, right, birthday parties and get-togethers and barbecues, or again, the activities that we just talked about that really provide quality of life, those come from our philanthropic efforts. And again, there are foundations within the community that we reach out to that support us, many individuals who make contributions. We do host a large event each year, again, and 100% of the proceeds go, to fund these sorts of things. So we really look at it and say, the community are our partners in making this happen. The beautiful thing being that we really have an opportunity to take, again, that funding we're receiving for basic needs and leverage it against philanthropic dollars and really create something spectacular. We have people that we've served for their entire adult lives who have had, opportunities, again, to engage in music and go on vacation and take art classes and have friends and have parties and all of those wonderful memories that we all want. And that has really been because of the generosity of our community in making that happen.
We're joined by Shandel Bronstein, the CEO of JARC, joining us on the Megacast. More information about the organization, as well as how you can help them by volunteering or by donating, should you be able to do either or both, is at their website, jarc.org, JARC.org, jarc.org. And so on the topic of fundraising, during the fall, you raised about $1.3 million from your fall fundraisers. Give us some insight on just how far that kind of money goes, because $1.3 million is a lot of money. It is a large sum of money, but for the care that you're providing, for the services that you're providing, and on top of that, the number of people that you're providing those services to, I would imagine that as much money as $1.3 million is, it can only go so far to helping so many people. Just how far does that kind of funding go, and how does that inform the necessity and the efforts that are put into fundraising all throughout the year?
Right. So again, it is a tremendous amount of money. And when you look at it, though, right across that number of people, that funding makes sure, critically important, that all of our homes have a designated van that makes sure that people can not only get to their medical appointments, which would be essential, but people can get to their leisure choices, to be places where they want to be, that all, again, of those vans are equipped with appropriate wheelchair slots and lifts, again, making sure that regardless of your ability or disability, you're able to come and go as you want. So again, it's hugely important. And, ultimately, we probably spend closer to $3 million a year, again, in philanthropy to make sure that every single person we serve in every setting, in every home, has everything that they need, from holiday celebrations, again, to birthday parties, to transportation, to leisure activities, and making sure that they have staff support available, not just for their safety needs, but to be able to engage in the activities of their choice.
Yeah, and if you think about the numbers, I just ran a very quick calculation. You said you have about 100 clients, a little over 100 clients that you're serving at any given time at this point in time. And so $1.3 million, you divide that by 100 clients, it's $130,000 divided by 12 months of the year. That's roughly $11,000 per month for each of these individuals for these programs. That includes all these additional programs, as you said, the transportation, the staffing, on top of fulfilling that extra 20% that Medicaid funding may not be able to cover. So if you really break it down, it really goes to show that yes, your organization is during these fall fundraisers pulled in a lot of money, but at the same time, that is only going so far. And if you think about the programs that are going into what you provide in your services to your clients, that just shows how critical funding is for organizations like yours and for other organizations as well that may also be bringing in similar funding in any given season, but it's going toward these significant programs. We're joined by Shandel Bronstein, CEO of JARC, joining us on the Megacast. For those that are interested in serving with the organization, of course, donating would be a significant help to the organization, but there are volunteer opportunities as well. Can you speak to some of those volunteer opportunities that may be available at this time, or if they aren't as available at this time due to COVID in the future?
We always have volunteers, again, and always opportunities available. We say all the time, there is room at our table for everyone. That is our mission. And volunteer opportunities can range from assisting us with administrative tasks, which always have to happen, to, again, potentially hosting an online or outdoor activity for a person served, for delivering supplies, for assisting us with food deliveries, again, grocery shopping, things like that. So if you can dream it, we can make it happen for you. And again, we always underscore, because that speaks to the work that we do, that everyone and everybody's special skills are welcome at our table and will help us to, again, just make our community that much better.
Well, Shandel, just a couple of minutes with you before we'll say goodbye today. Anything else that would be important for our audience to know at this time about your organization, or things that we should be keeping an eye out for from JARC in the near future?
So again, I always say, the most important thing that people can remember is to understand, right, that just because somebody has a developmental disability does not mean that they are a less than. I think that we often assume, right, that somebody who may be differently able doesn't necessarily have, the same dreams and hopes and goals, and nothing could be farther from the truth. Just the way that they need to approach accomplishing those dreams and goals just takes a little more effort. And I think it's just incredibly important that we all look out and remember that each one of us is different, but each one of us, again, regardless of our abilities, is unique and wonderful and special. And just taking a minute, right, to look to the outside world and to see everyone as the unique human that they are.
Shandel, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
People are getting out to walk and bike in higher numbers. More vulnerable road users and higher speed traffic can be a dangerous combination. Crash severity has increased, so if you're driving, be sure to slow down and look for people. There's no need to speed. If you're biking, ride with traffic. If you're walking, avoid stepping into the road if possible. If you have to walk in the street, walk facing traffic. Learn more at walkbikedrivesafe.org.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
How can I help you?
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources, call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
Joining me now is Dustin McClellan, once again the founder and CEO of the Pontiac Community Foundation, as the foundation is partnering with multiple local businesses and major businesses in the city of Pontiac to benefit the youth in the community and the greater community as well. Dustin, thank you for being with us again.
Tyler, it's so great to be back with you here on the Megacast, and appreciate your highlighting our work in Pontiac and what's happening in Pontiac from a broad sense as well.
Yeah, Pontiac is continuing to have a major resurgence. They're doing great things, and your organization definitely is building a lot of those partnerships and benefiting people all across the board in the city. So for those that aren't familiar, Dustin, with the Pontiac Community Foundation, or they haven't seen you on this program before and heard you talk about it, can you just give a brief overview of what the foundation is, and you as the founder, what the mission of the Pontiac Community Foundation is?
Absolutely. I appreciate that, Tyler. We are proud to be celebrating 4 years of operation in the city of Pontiac. And our mission is to engage philanthropy, leadership, and collaboration to tackle Pontiac's most pressing issues. When we founded the organization, we felt as though there needed to be a body in the city serving as a neutral convener, a collaborator, a thought partner, partner, a group being a catalyst for change in Pontiac. And so we set out to do just that, and we're proud about the success we've been able to accomplish through all of the ups and downs of the last 4 years with COVID-19 and our small businesses being in need and continuing to reach youth and seniors and families in the city. And of course, our ultimate vision is to see Pontiac as the premier place to live, work, and play, that the residents here would have a strong quality of life and be able to have all of the amenities and resources they need to thrive.
We're joined by Dustin McClellan, the founder and CEO of the Pontiac Community Foundation. And Dustin, last time that you had joined us back in October, the foundation at that time had begun a partnership with Reimagine Recreation as well as United Wholesale Mortgage to put forth some renovations on the UWM Sports Complex. Can you talk about the work that's been done at the sports complex and also the benefit that facility has to the youth in Pontiac and surrounding areas?
Absolutely. We're so grateful for the United Wholesale Mortgage team, the Reimagine Recreation team, for as they have taken on this sports complex that was formerly the Ultimate Soccer Arenas. They said, we're going to continue operations for entities that play for pay, if you will, or pay for play, if you will, but we're also going to make sure that we have slots in their regular schedule for community members. And so we work diligently to connect them with community organizations, nonprofits, sports teams that had a need for a recreation space. And there are a number of entities that are operating out of the sports complex now. They've done a wonderful renovation of the facility, a brand new basketball and multi-court sports space. And it will soon be announcing some other entities that'll be moving into that space. I know that our city has been invited to use the space for the city's youth recreation program. And so it's an amazing opportunity for our local residents to be in a state-of-the-art facility. And we're so grateful for UWM's ongoing work in the city of Pontiac.
And on top of that, another important element that may be overlooked is that having a complex like the UWM Sports Complex there and having those opportunities for kids in the community, it also provides them with transportation back and forth, which can be critical. And for a lot of kids, either their parents or themselves are not able to have that reliable transportation from point A to point Z during their entire day. And this provides that opportunity and bridges that gap. Can you talk a little bit about the foundation's role in establishing those transportation partnerships to benefit not just the kids in Pontiac, but also adults and others in Pontiac as well that may be struggling with transportation?
Absolutely, Tyler. You know, we estimate that roughly 17% of Pontiac residents are without transportation. And so that's regular transportation to doctor's appointments and grocery stores, and of course to after-school programs and youth recreation. And so we worked with M1 Concourse, that is also right on the south side of the city near UWM, to create a new initiative for transportation that we've entitled M1 Mobility. And the whole goal of that program was to partner our nonprofit philanthropic entity with M1 Concourse that wanted to have a greater charitable arm to provide transportation solutions for Pontiac residents through a shuttle service. And so we've started by working with after-school programs that need to utilize facilities like UWM so that we can ensure that children have access to those programs. And we're so grateful for UWM's partnership and M1 Concourse's partnership in that. We actually just this week had a vehicle donated by UWM to further extend the program, and we're excited about adding other needs onto that. And we have had a tremendous outpouring from community organizations and community members saying, hey, this is a need that we have across the city for senior services, for returning citizens, for a wide variety of those that are here in our city that have this need. And so we've just scratched the surface, and we look forward to expanding to meet that need on a wide scale here in the city.
We're joined by Dustin McClellan, founder and CEO of the Pontiac Community Foundation. You can learn more information on their website, pontiaccommunityfoundation.org. That's pontiaccommunityfoundation.org. And so in putting forth this program and partnering with the M1 Concourse and with other partners in the city on this transportation issue, both for the kids and for the adults and the general public, in doing so and analyzing the transportation situation in the city of Pontiac and in its neighboring areas where people are venturing in and out of Pontiac for work, for recreation, for other important purposes as well. When analyzing all that and with your partners coming up with this plan, what realization did you come to of just how much of an issue transportation is in a general sense for the population in Pontiac and surrounding areas? Even though it is a city that is a growing city and it's a city that is very much on the comeback, it can be tough for people in cities like Pontiac and other cities of its size and major cities in the U.S. to have that basic transportation infrastructure there. And so where did you kind of realize along the way that this was such a great need in the city?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tyler. You know, as I mentioned, roughly 17% of Pontiac residents don't have regular access to transportation. And we're grateful for organizations like SMART that help begin to help those that are in need. But we, along with M1 Concourse, met with a lot of our nonprofit organizations, a lot of our civic organizations, our community leaders. And the recurring theme that came from those leaders was the need for transportation. And we know that this has been a hot button topic in Pontiac and Oakland County for many, many years. And as we talked with our partners at M1 Concourse, we said, you know what, we may not be able to solve the entire issue, but we can make a dent in it. And instead of doing more studies and more conversations, we said, let's jump right in. And so that's why this after-school shuttle service is so valuable, and the other tiers we'll add to the program will be valuable because our work at the Pontiac Community Foundation has constantly been about bringing solutions that help everyday residents on a regular basis, and we hope to continue doing that through this initiative and others.
We're joined by Dustin McClellan, founder and CEO of the Pontiac Community Foundation. Learn more on their website, pontiaccommunityfoundation.org. And Dustin, in addition to your work, of course, with the foundation, you've also done more important work in the city as well, being part of the 13-member transition team for the new incoming Mayor Tim Greimel, who recently took office. We actually have him coming up next on the Megacast. We have him in the Zoom now, so we'll bring him in just briefly as well. So, and while we do that, talk about being a part of that transition team and the importance of your role and the other 12 members' role in making that a smooth transition from Mayor Waterman, the previous mayor's administration in the city, to Mayor Greimel's administration now in the city, especially given the momentum of Pontiac in the past several months and certainly in the past several years.
Well, Tyler, you hit the nail on the head there. We're really at a crossroads as a city, and we have tremendous opportunity right now, right before us. So many resources pouring in, unfortunately, but also fortunately because of COVID, we have an opportunity to make broader investments into our city. We have the two businesses we mentioned, UWM and M1 Concourse, along with others. And now we've elected a new mayor who is serious about moving forward the priorities that everyday residents have, like getting the basic business of the city done properly and at a high level. And alongside of him being elected, we have a brand new council in its entirety that is also saying, we're ready to roll up our sleeves. We're going to put aside the issues of the past and move forward in making a difference in the city. And so myself, along with a tremendous group of individuals that are on this transition team, have been working diligently along with the administration to lay out all of the plans, all of the strategies, all of the action items that need to happen over the next year and over the next 4 years. And we're excited to do that work and hand that off to the administration as they seek to move the city forward in a very, very positive and substantive direction. And we are excited about it. The community is excited about it. And there's a palpable energy. And we look forward to all of the good change that's going to happen in the days ahead.
And Mayor Grimal, for you, just briefly, while we have you on with Dustin, having him and having those other 12 members of your transition team in place, especially given Dustin's role with the Pontiac Community Foundation that is doing such important work in the city, how important is it to have those pillars of the community be taking a serious part in the role of transitioning the previous mayor's administration to your administration, not only to make a smooth transition in leadership from the programs and initiatives that had been put forth and been in progress from the previous administration, but also, like Dustin said, to lay the groundwork and lay out the map for your administration's initiatives going forward and plans for continuing to build a great future in Pontiac?
It's absolutely essential, Tyler. It really is critical work that the transition team is doing. I'm very fortunate to have such a talented leader like Dustin being the chair of the transition team. But I'm also fortunate to have, and the community is fortunate, more importantly, to have a tremendously talented group of people on the transition team. These are folks who include community activists, faith leaders, people with in-depth human resource professional backgrounds. It includes business leaders here in the local community. It's a very diverse group by every measure, including and especially professional background, professional experience. And the community is very fortunate to have these very talented folks who are dedicating an enormous amount of their time to making sure that this transition works effectively and smoothly. And perhaps even more importantly, laying the groundwork for policy proposals and other longer-term solutions that will deliver results for the community so that we're investing in our young people, making sure that we're improving the quality of life for everyone and expanding economic opportunity for all.
Mayor Granville, thank you. We'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes. Before we let you go, Dustin, I just want to touch on, you were recently recognized by Crain's Detroit Business as part of their Elite 40 Under 40 in Metro Detroit. Can you talk about the honor, what it means for you personally, as well as the recognition and how that brings awareness to the great work that's being done by the Pontiac Community Foundation?
I was delighted and a little surprised to receive the award from Crain's Business Detroit, and excited and honored to receive the award personally. But more importantly, I think Crain's was excited to highlight Pontiac, highlight the work we're doing, highlight the leaders in Pontiac. And, you know, the whole reason, one of the major reasons we started the Pontiac Community Foundation is because Pontiac has historically been overlooked, historically been marginalized, historically been disadvantaged. And I'm excited to be a small part of ensuring that Pontiac is on the map in southeastern Michigan and even beyond that on the world stage, because we have a world-class city with world-class residents, and our future is very bright.
Dustin, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate your time and telling us about these great initiatives. Of course, the improvements that have been made at the United Wholesale Mortgage Sports Complex, as well as the transportation program in partnership with M1 Concourse. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Always great to be with you.
Parents do a lot of worrying. Get your kids caught up on childhood vaccines to protect them from these 14 preventable diseases, and you'll have 14 fewer things to worry about. Vaccines are safe and effective and save lives. So let's get caught up on vaccines and worry about something else. Get the facts at ivaccinate.org.
We may come from different organizations,
but we work together to protect the Huron River for everyone.
Most of the pollution that goes into our rivers is carried by rainwater that flows off of roads, parking lots, and rooftops.
The leaves and bark of a single tree can retain a surprising amount of rainwater. Depending on its size and species, it could be 100 gallons or more.
It is estimated that an urban forest can reduce annual runoff by up to 7%.
Here's one thing that we know can help keep our water clean.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
Plant a tree.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
One of the things you can look for in your friends is a change in behavior. These can be big changes, they can be small changes in mood, physical appearance. They may be sleeping less or sleeping more, drinking more, or their eating patterns may be different.
One big change that can be pretty obvious is change in motivation. Do they no longer want to play basketball? Do they no longer want to play video games?
Now that we're spending more time online and in virtual settings, it's really important to pay attention to the language that your friend is using and the words they're using to communicate.
So when we text our friends, are they taking longer amounts of time to respond? Are they not responding at all? You don't have to be an expert to try to recognize these signs. The second that you feel it in your gut and that you're concerned, that's a second to have the conversation and open the door to what might be going on.
Today, it is easier than ever to join Michigan's Organ Donor Registry and help build a bridge of hope for organ, tissue, and eye donation. Just one person can potentially save or help improve the lives of up to 75 people. By joining, your legacy could be the gift of life. Sign up today at michigan.gov/SOS or at any of the more than 145 Secretary of State self-service stations located across Michigan. Be part of Michigan's Bridge of Hope by adding your name to the Organ Donor Registry.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. When you don't know where to turn, let 211 be your guiding light.
"211, how can I help you?"
Our guides are ready to connect you with the help you need. For help with food, healthcare, mental health, and other resources, call 211 or visit 211.org. 211. Get connected, get help.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM.
Whether you're the city,
the county,
or the Huron River Watershed Council,
we work together to protect water resources for everyone.
Most of the pollution entering our rivers is carried by rainwater that runs off roads, parking lots, and rooftops.
A rain garden helps catch stormwater runoff.
Rain gardens and their plants help dirty runoff soak into the ground.
You can do your part to help keep our water clean.
Learn about rain gardens and native plants.
So consider a rain garden in your home landscaping.
Catch the runoff with a rain garden.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Welcome to the Michigan Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe. You can learn more about our show by visiting our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where we have links to every one of our partnering television, radio, and web outlets that join us each and every day, including My Michigan TV, our flagship for the Michigan Megacast hour of the show. Joining us now is Dr. Jamie Taweel. He is an internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates, with us once again on the Megacast. Dr. Taweel, thank you for being back with us.
How you doing?
Doing well. How are you doing?
I'm getting there. It's been an interesting couple of months, but we're doing all right.
It has been. It seems like now, with case numbers starting to trend back downward, that it seems that we are on the back end of that major surge we had with the Omicron variant and kind of that mixture of the Omicron variant and the Delta variant here in the state of Michigan. So at your practice and in the local medical community around you in southeastern Michigan, where are we in terms of addressing the COVID-19 pandemic, and more importantly, the stress that the pandemic during this most recent surge and all these surges we've had really have put on our medical community?
Well, things are starting to slow down a bit, and thank the Lord. The Christmas, the holiday season, things went through the roof. We had a huge surge that was out of control. And everyone got it, myself included. Actually, I managed to pick up COVID somehow. And that all happened during the holidays. The majority of the people got it during the Christmas, New Year's time and a little bit thereafter, but it looks like it's now trending down. So I think a lot of the strain that's happening to the healthcare systems in the area are starting to ease up a little bit. I was reading a statistic today where typically COVID cases were taking up to 23% of hospital beds. Is now down to about 12%. Don't quote me on those numbers. It was something I just was reading a little bit earlier today, but it looks like it's starting to trend down. We're not out of the woods yet, but we're definitely making improvements.
And so and on that note, too, one of the ways that we are able to make some of those improvements, or at least relieve some of that stress that's put on our hospital systems, on our medical community in the times of these surges, and even outside of those surges, is through vaccination and through the booster shots. Dr. Fauci recently said, as did other medical experts, they stated that it seems the effects of the COVID-19 booster shots that are available, they start to wane after about 4 months. Would you imagine that? Have you been hearing that at all? And if so, if you're hearing something similar to that, would you imagine that the COVID-19 booster shots, and we've heard so many times that this may just become something similar to your annual flu shot, would in this case maybe be something that's more often needed than the flu shot until we get to a point where maybe there is that booster once a year and these variants aren't spreading so quickly?
I don't know 100% about that, but I do feel that the booster shots are going to be a little bit waning. I think that again, the amount of people that I've found that have been getting COVID has gone up significantly as of late, specifically, again, over the holidays. And a lot of those people had been vaccinated. So I do feel that the booster shot might be wearing down a little bit. And I have no doubt in my mind that it's going to be something that we're going to have to get recurrent. We're going to have to keeping up against any variants that come up. It can be a little bit frustrating to keep receiving booster shots, but I feel like it will be an annual thing. That's, again, my words, not anyone else's. It's just my thoughts. But it seems as if that's the case. However, I do feel that people that have been vaccinated and boosted are getting much, much less severe cases of COVID. I mean, a lot of the people that have gotten COVID that have been vaccinated and boosted have had very mild cases, mild upper respiratory symptoms, fatigue, loss of sense of smell, but otherwise have been doing pretty okay for the most part. We're also seeing significant amounts of people that are trying to get the treatments like the monoclonal antibody treatments and things like that at the local hospitals as well. And some hospitals are allowing it and some hospitals aren't, but it seems to be improving people along the way.
We're joined by Dr. Jamie Taweel, internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates, with us on the Megacast. Dr. Taweel, another issue we've heard a lot about throughout the pandemic, especially as things have started to open back up, is that continued reluctance that some may have been having to go see their doctor, to get those annual checkups, to go in for those ailments and those aches that they may need to get checked by their doctor or by a specialist. Have we seen that sort of issue wane a little bit in recent months as things have continued to open back up, and especially now as we're starting to see a dip in coronavirus cases as we're coming out of this most recent surge with the Omicron variant?
So I have seen, when COVID first hit, people were avoiding all types of preventative care. People weren't getting their colonoscopies. A lot of that was due to hospitals closing down their elective surgeries. People weren't getting mammograms. People were afraid to get imaging because they didn't want to go to those hospitals because of the overwhelming burden that was on them from the variant wave. I'm now starting to see people starting to open up a lot more. So we are getting a lot more preventative cases back in. This is starting to become more annual physicals and not so much head colds and COVID. So it is picking up a little bit. There are people that are still trying to avoid it. There are people that have a lot of significant comorbidities, people that are high risk that are still avoiding going out there. And I can understand that and respect that. Excuse me. We are still doing there's still a lot of physicians that are doing virtual appointments to try and keep things along, but it doesn't replace, getting labs, getting a stethoscope on you, having a doctor examine you, making sure that everything's okay. Hopefully I'm answering that question for you.
Yeah. And among those checks that you're getting when you're going to your doctor are, of course, respiratory checks and some basic cardiac checks as well. This is American Heart Month. And so we're trying to keep our hearts as healthy as possible. It's raising awareness for that. And of course, stress, a big factor in cardiac health. And we've had a number of different additional stressors in addition to all those normal things come into play over the last couple of years. Have you noticed an increase in patients with some heart ailments as a result of some of those stresses or compounding stressors and factors during the pandemic or more recently because of either inactivity or added stresses or other factors in the last couple of years?
So yeah, I have noticed a lot of, let me say that just for, again, anecdotally here, what I am seeing a lot more of is patients that are having a lot more chest pain. People have gained a lot of weight during COVID. I'm no exception. And they've been a lot less active. People are working from home and it has changed a lot of their lifestyles. So I am seeing patients that are having a little bit more significant symptoms of chest pain, either it be from them being sedentary versus otherwise, but there's also been some increases in cardiac things, but I also think that's because people are starting to come back out of the woodwork and going to the doctors. We are catching some things ahead of time. We are also seeing a lot, I'm still seeing a lot of patients that are coming in after their hospitalization for an unfortunate heart attack. So it's picking up a little bit. And I think it's also because we're now looking at it a little bit more. We're now able to accept the bandwidth of being able to see patients for other things other than just COVID. I know the cardiologists that I work with are busier than they have ever been. So it's just been, I think, a lot of catch up, so to speak.
And so we hear a lot about different risk factors that can increase your chances of heart disease or of cardiac issues, things like living a sedentary lifestyle, like a high cholesterol or high salt diet are among some of those things that can lead to cardiac issues. But what are some more uncommon things that activities or factors that people may not be considering that can often lead to heart-related issues?
Absolutely. So the things that you want to be really, really aware of is family history. If you have a family history of heart disease, you got to be on the lookout because that can always be an issue for you. If you have high cholesterol, if you have high blood pressure, diabetic is a big, huge risk factor. So if you're a diabetic and you're not having good control of your blood sugars, that can be a significant problem for you. So you really want to try and keep your sugars under control. You want to make sure that your diet is going to be low in cholesterol, get your cholesterol checked, all that fun stuff. Another huge one is smoking. And bear in mind, smoking is, the carcinogens in the tobacco is always going to cause lung damage as well as heart issues, but the nicotine is what's also causing heart issues as well. So people that have switched from cigarettes to vape pens, for example, or vaping devices, there's still nicotine in that, which can increase your risk for heart disease. So, people that often feel like, hey, I'm moving towards a more safer alternative for cigarettes. While you are moving in a good direction, there's still a lot of things out there that is really bad about those things, and they can sometimes even be worse in certain cases. But let's not reduce the fact that it can also continue your risk for heart disease as well. So please, if you can, if you're a patient and you have a family history or you're smoking, diabetic, high blood pressure, try to get those under control as best as possible, or else, that's going to come for you, unfortunately. We got to try and reduce that risk as much as possible.
And we've also heard a lot over the course of the pandemic about people maybe increasing their alcohol intake as well from being maybe casual, a few drinks per week pre-pandemic to when they were home more often during the pandemic. They didn't have as much to do. They were on their own time, having their own fun, and maybe indulging a little bit with alcohol. How does alcohol consumption and that lack of moderation or change in what they consider moderation affect heart health?
A lot of ways. First and foremost, let's not forget the fact that alcohol has a significant amount of calories, so weight gain is going to be a big factor. Alcohol consumed in excess will also cause your blood pressure to rise significantly. And that is going to cause a significant amount of stress to your heart. Patients that drink quite frequently will also find themselves putting themselves at higher risk for atrial fibrillation, which is an arrhythmia of the heart, which can cause further heart problems down the line, increases your risk for sleep apnea, which can cause stress on the heart. It can also just a plethora of risk factors. And I am seeing a rise in alcohol consumption due to people being at home more often, due to people having increased anxiety over this entire pandemic and being at home. Being at home full time and working from home is stressful. You're not away from your office. Your office is at your house, and it's difficult to relax. The stress of family can sometimes just compound it, because sometimes family plus work do not mix well. It can be a lot. So trying to reduce alcohol consumption is going to be a big thing, because it can definitely impact your heart in multiple ways.
So if people that may be considering themselves to be, generally speaking, healthy, or may not feel like they have cardiac issues or having heart problems, but may have some risk factors. What should they be looking out for in terms of symptoms, in terms of feelings that they may experience that may be either symptomatic or at least maybe just be basic indicators that a problem could be oncoming or that they are currently experiencing some cardiac issues?
Absolutely. Well, it can be different for everybody, but the common I'm having heart problems is going to be, chest pressure, sometimes can go up the neck or down the left arm, can sometimes have shortness of breath, nausea, sweating. Those are big indicators. Those are, I need to go to the ER immediately. However, subtle signs of heart disease include difficulty breathing, or I'm feeling significantly fatigued when I'm doing things that normally were not a big issue. We get a lot of patients that are, they sit around for a long period of time. They've been sitting home because of the pandemic. It snows. They go outside and they start shoveling. They suddenly exert themselves to a significant amount, and they can really cause problems. We see a lot of heart attacks from that, as well as people that are like hunters that are in the woods, drinking booze and just minding their own business. And then they shoot a deer. And now they have to drag 100 pounds across the forest in the middle of winter. It can sometimes cause some heart issues as well. Things that you're going to want to look for before those big events are going to be anything that's sudden or different. So I get a lot of patients that come in and go, yeah, I'm a little short of breath, but I think it might just be due to age. But if they weren't short of breath a few months ago and suddenly it's starting to become a big deal, like going up the stairs, I'm feeling really tired and fatigued and I'm getting a little sweaty, palpitations, lightheadedness, dizziness, headaches, things like that. Those are all subtle signs that you could be having some heart issues, and you should get that looked at.
We're joined by Dr. Jamie Taweel, internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates, joining us on the Megacast. And Dr. Taweel, over the past weekend, a longtime Detroit radio broadcaster, Frank Beckman, passed away, and he had died of what was termed vascular dementia. Can you tell us, what is vascular dementia, and then tell us what can cause that condition in somebody?
Certainly, and it's sorry to hear about that. My heart goes out to his family. The vascular dementia is a subset of dementia. Dementia has multiple causes, the number one cause being Alzheimer's dementia, but there's a subset called vascular dementia, which is dementia caused by any type of issues with regards to blood flow of the brain. So anyone that has a stroke with mental status changes beyond that will have issues that can be considered vascular dementia. People that have really bad coronary disease or really bad vascular disease, so they're not getting blood flow to particular areas of their brain, that can cause vascular dementia. People that have heart disease that aren't getting enough blood flow to their brain, people that are having multiple emboli that are really small, they're like very small infarcts, very small occlusions in their brain that are not going to be noticeable by a stroke is pretty obvious, but multiple tiny little strokes like that kind of present themselves as dementia. The difference is based on diagnostics is going to be imaging. So when you do an imaging of the brain, you'll see that there are areas of the brain that aren't getting blood supply, and there's inflammatory issues that are going to suggest that they have vascular dementia. So it's just dementia caused by other factors other than Alzheimer's. And you can even have a mixed picture that can make things a little bit worse.
Dr. Taweel, any other medical issues that we're seeing becoming more common across the board, or things that our community should be aware of going forward?
Just the usual stuff. You want to make sure that you are staying up to date on all preventative testing, colonoscopies, mammograms, getting your heart checked, getting your diet corrected, make sure your diabetes is controlled. We're still in this pandemic, but we are getting better. So I'm very pleased to see that this is improving, and the cases that I'm seeing are much more mild. This has been a godsend. So hopefully this continues in the right direction. I think we're going to continue to do well and get past this and hopefully get back to normal lives.
Dr. Taweel, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, as always.
Appreciate it. We've been joined by Dr. Jamie Taweel, internal medicine specialist at Grand River Medical Associates. We're going to take a break here on the Michigan Megacast. Coming up next, if you like numbers, you'll love our conversation with Kurt Metzger, the founder of Data Driven Detroit. He'll talk about some of the changes in population here in the state of Michigan, including one metric that is making history here in the Great Lakes State. And then at 11:40, Dr. Roberto Rinaldi, the Vice President of Clinical Integration at JVS Human Services and Kadima, will join us. That's all coming up next on the Michigan Megacast.
A message from the staff of Michigan's Crime Victim Compensation Program.
Anyone can be a victim of crime
and suffer lasting trauma, physically, emotionally, and financially.
But you are not alone.
If you're struggling financially due to a crime,
we're here
for you. Find out if you qualify for crime victim compensation.
Call 877-251-7373 or visit michigan.gov/crime victim.
A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Victim Services.
If you are struggling to afford your internet bills during the pandemic, there's a temporary government program that may be able to help. It's called the Emergency Broadband Benefit, and it provides up to a $50 monthly discount on your broadband bill to qualifying households. Find more information about the program, including if you qualify and how to enroll, at fcc.gov/broadbandbenefit or call toll-free at 833-511-0311.
A public service announcement from 89.3 Lakes FM. As we begin the second half of our show today, we bring in Kurt Metzger, a demographer and founder of Data Driven Detroit, with us on the Megacast. Kurt, thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I appreciate having you on. So for the first time in recorded history in the state of Michigan, we've had a year in 2020 with more deaths than births. Now, initially, knee-jerk reaction, the low-hanging fruit here is to assume that's because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Is that the case, or are there other reasons that are a greater factor behind that, or an additional factor behind what that statistic may be driven by?
Yes, there are other factors, and just to make the point that even taking the COVID deaths, at least as Michigan Department of Health and Human Services have coded them, if we took the COVID deaths out of the mix, we would still have more deaths than births in Michigan. So a lot of people who will say, okay, once COVID is done, this whole trend will be gone and everything will be fine. Not true at all. What's happening is we've been seeing this slow and steady decrease in births in the state, combined with a slow and steady increase in deaths. And this is, partially, talking the births overall, we're talking about lower birth rates. Women, certainly once education became more and more a factor, and women were going to college, going to graduate school, going to medical school, professional degrees, they have slowly but surely delayed marriage, and even with that, delayed further childbearing. And many are choosing not to. So what we've been seeing is this decrease in births. Michigan has even more of a factor because we lose so many of our young people are moving out. They're going to other states. So people in their childbearing years, women in their childbearing years, the numbers have been going down. The percentage of women in their childbearing years has been going down. So it's kind of that combination of we have fewer women in their childbearing years, plus we have a lower birth rate. So we're seeing this continuous drop. On the other side, we have an older population. Michigan is one of the aging states, fastest aging states, because of this loss of the young people, because of the lower births, and because we are majority white population, which is older. So Michigan is getting older. We have it's something like 25 counties in the state that have median ages above 50. When your median age is above 50, you're not having a lot of children. And so we've kind of been seeing this getting closer and closer. Back in 2019, there was only about an 8,000 difference between births and deaths. Back in 1990, there was a 75,000 difference. So you see this loss, and now 2020 just pushed it over the edge.
We're joined by Kurt Metzger, founder of Data Driven Detroit, joining us on the Megacast. And just for some reference here in the local area, Wayne and Genesee counties lost 1,269 and 1,220 people, respectively, followed by separately counted in the city of Detroit, not included in Wayne County's numbers, a 723 person loss in the city of Detroit. For reference of births versus deaths in Oakland County, a 609 person difference, more deaths than births here in Oakland County, where we originate our broadcast, and only And only for reference, 7 of Michigan's 83 counties saw an increase in population in the 2020 census results. And so that's kind of what we're looking into. And Kurt, also something that we saw a lot during the earlier portions of the COVID-19 pandemic, as people were either out of their jobs and looking for a change of scenery, or people were fed up with restrictions in the state of Michigan versus in other states in the region or across the U.S. A lot of people were moving as well. How much of a factor was people moving out of the state for a variety of different reasons in the changes of these numbers ultimately in the 2020 census?
Well, 2020, the state actually picked up a few people. It came actually a little bit higher than what we had anticipated. But since, the problem with Michigan has always been that we send more people away to other states than we get in. We are an out-migrant state. So it varies based on the economy, how many people we're losing. And certainly in recent years, it's been much better. Our losses have been maybe averaging about 7,000 a year, as opposed to back in recessions when we were losing up to 80,000 a year. So there's that. I mean, that obviously plays into it. Michigan is not able to attract younger people. And we're also, another factor is the number of immigrants. Michigan has been able to average about 18,000 immigrants a year directly, and then we get some secondary immigrants go to other states and then move to Michigan. Because of immigration numbers down, that additional factor to Michigan has dropped. So we're not getting the immigrant numbers that we used to. And immigrants tend to they tend to come here in their childbearing years. They tend to be younger, and they also tend to have higher birth rates. So there are a number of factors that are just kind of playing against Michigan. And as you point out, I think a lot of people did leave. There is that hope that people who could do work remotely would be more apt to want to come to maybe Michigan because of our lakes and our climate and everything else. People who like that kind of living would be more apt to come to Michigan, but we're not seeing those numbers either. We are seeing them go. Minnesota has done a good job of attracting. Wisconsin has done a good job. So there are northern states that are able to attract and have been very good at attracting people because of winter sports and other kinds of activities. Michigan, even with pure Michigan and everything, we don't seem to have that same attraction. And again, as you said, 76 of the 83 counties had more deaths than births. Generally, we're seeing on an average year, we're seeing about 50 counties with more deaths than births. So, outside of, we have better than 2/3 of the state. It's just more or less one county after another losing population, not being able to attract population. And so it just seems to me that the state has a lot of work to do to try to figure out how do we start to turn these trends around.
We're joined by Kurt Metzger, founder of Data Driven Detroit and also a demographer for Data Driven Detroit, joining us on the Megacast to talk about some of the changes in population recorded in 2020 U.S. Census data. And so taking all those factors into consideration and recognizing, as you said, some of the differences in the numbers in neighboring states in the region like Wisconsin and like Minnesota, is this commonality of is the commonality rather there in terms of neighboring states in our region having numbers like this in the past or in recent times? Given that Michigan, this is the first time since in its recorded history that they've recorded more deaths than births in the state. Is that something more common in other states in the region or across the board in the U.S., or is this something that is relatively rare across the board in recorded population numbers?
Well, it's become more common in basically states surrounding Michigan. I mean, it's more the Midwest and Northeast. So certainly Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, these are all primarily white. These are whiter states in terms of the population, which means that they're older. Again, they're the states that tend to be losing population or growing very slowly, and certainly losing representation in Congress. So we are part of that. You're also seeing those in the northeastern United States, where they're even a large, more white in terms of their population and also aging. So it is that, again, it's this, what we've been seeing nationally, the trends are population leaving the Midwest and the Northeast, heading south, heading southwest, heading west. Although you're seeing some interesting migration changes with a lot of people leaving California and heading to Montana and Nevada and to New Mexico and on and on. They're coming inland. A lot of that because of immigration and again, policies and other issues at the state level. But it tends to be, Michigan is not that unique in terms of its neighboring states. It's just that when you look at Michigan and you look at so much empty territory and so many counties that are just losing population, losing economic base, not being able to attract people, the question is what happens to the Upper Peninsula outside of Marquette and Houghton counties that have universities? All the other counties have been losing for quite a while. The same thing is if you look at the northeastern part of the Lower Peninsula and you look at those counties along the southern border of Michigan, they're all just kind of suffering. And we have all this land and everybody is obviously saying that by 2050, Michigan will be the magnet for all those, all the climate problems and people moving to Michigan because we will be the best state for climate. But in the meantime, we got 30 years to think about what are we going to do to try to re-engage the economies and try to get people moving into some of these areas that are slowly disappearing.
And so, Kurt, that brings up an interesting question too, because these drops in population, from the outside looking in, for someone that doesn't really understand the implications of that on a state level and certainly on a federal level, they may think, okay, we're going to lose a couple of seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. We have a slightly smaller population. Maybe our schools on the local level are going to lose some of that basic funding that they get from tax dollars in our city. But for places that are near major cities or in high population centers, that might not be as great of a factor to them as, like you said, those smaller cities in the Northern Peninsula or even those smaller cities locally that have a lot of reliance on those federal dollars and those state dollars. So when we look at these population changes from 2010 to 2020 census and see some of those dips in numbers, particularly near those areas with smaller populations or less resources from the onset, despite the population, what kind of residual effects can that drop in population from a funding standpoint from the federal and state level have on those communities as their population dwindles?
Well, it certainly is going, as you say, federal funding, even federal funding that comes through the state and then is distributed, is based on census numbers in various aspects. So it's total population, it's poverty population, it's youth population, a number of other things. So obviously, as those numbers go down, the funding formulas kick in and the funding goes down as well. So as far as federal funds and even state funds, that's going to affect some of these areas. What the problem, in addition, is that Michigan doesn't seem to give up its own, everybody wants to have their own community. They want to have their own school district. They want to have, everybody, nobody's going to give up what they've got. And so you're seeing, even though the population has dropped, and especially the population in many of the areas of the state, school districts aren't disappearing. All these various areas that need funding keep advocating for money with decreasing populations, something has to give. And I think, we're still, even in Southeast Michigan, we're, while we saw some more deaths than births this time around, we're still kind of holding our own. We're not growing quickly. We're kind of staying relatively constant. SEMCOG predicts a little bit of growth, but it's that kind of collaboration and that's working together. And I think it becomes more important that we start thinking about, do we start to collapse? Do we start to put school districts together? Do we need to start, it's kind of this, how do regions start to work together? How do communities start to work together? We cannot afford to be independent operators, all fighting for limited dollars. Right now, the state's flush because of all the funds that have come from the feds. A couple of years, those are going to be gone. What are we going to do about it? And I think that Michigan needs to look at these demographic trends and see how those are going to affect economic trends going forward. What is it going to mean when the state is distributing money? Are we going to keep sending money to the counties that are getting smaller and smaller? What do we start to do? And I think that needs to be, there's some hard decisions that need to be made.
It brings up an interesting quandary, too, for those that are representing those smaller counties and those that are representing those counties that are seeing that slow growth still, but not significant growth in the future when they're making those decisions and discussing those decisions, particularly in budget discussions at the state level and at the federal level going forward. And so, of course, we're joined by Kurt Metzger, a demographer and founder of Data Driven Detroit, joining us on the Megacast. We recently, of course, had the release of the congressional maps for the state of Michigan, for State House and Senate, as well for the U.S. House. On top of that, by the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, of course, with residual lawsuits resulting from that as well, from those opposing their maps. That among those, the Detroit Caucus's lawsuit has been dropped by the Michigan Supreme Court. That happened earlier on this week. When you study these maps, what do you think about the job that the commission has done in providing new maps for the next 10 years that are properly representing the populations of these given areas, especially given the changes that Michigan's population has undergone, particularly the changes in the diversity of the state of Michigan's population?
Well, the one thing I want to do is congratulate the commission and also give credit to the state of Michigan for trying to get rid of political gerrymandering and take it out of. So, for Michigan, which tends to follow the trends most often, this was something that showed us to be quite at the head of the class, more or less, to put it together. And so, when you look at also when you start looking at the distribution of diversity in this region, and you, particularly in this region, you see it in other areas, but more Southeast Michigan, and then in particular cities, maybe Flint, Saginaw Bay, Muskegon, a couple, but those are still fairly small populations of minority groups. I think the question, and I still have some concerns about this idea that the commission was told that African Americans could elect their preferred candidate with a 40% or 40 to 45% of the district. I'm not so sure of that, and I think that the data that were used were so limited and were not strong enough to really make those kinds of opinions. So I think that that's going to be problematic. And certainly when you look at the districts, there are very few districts within Detroit, and certainly that's partially attributable to the fact that Detroit's population keeps getting smaller and smaller. It can't even in and of itself be one congressional district, even if they wanted to. And when you start looking at the state house and state senate, the fact is you've had a lot of migration out of the city into the suburbs. So, and we're seeing that in other parts of the state, that the we don't have those concentrations necessarily, that there is a much greater movement. And so the districts had to take that into account. I think that they could have run the percentage of African Americans up a little bit in some, that they really did cut the number of minority districts. But I have to, and I do, when I looked at the U.S. congressional districts in Oakland County, is it part of 6 of them? Seems a little bit much. I mean, it's cutting up the county a little more than I would necessarily think is necessary. But I think they did overall, I mean, I have to say that they did a great job. And I think that they have, by all measures, they have cut down the preference, the party preference in terms of the way the numbers played out, just kind of putting back voting patterns on top of the new districts. I mean, I have to believe that they've done a pretty good job. I know that people are not going to be happy in certain areas, but you can't please everybody. I think for a first shot at this, and for 11, what was it? Oh, what was it, 11 people, 13 people? Can't remember. Who had no experience in any of this before. I think they did a marvelous job.
We're joined by Kurt Metzger, demographer and founder of Data Driven Detroit. Kurt, thank you very much for joining us and talking over this complicated information. That it's really interesting when you dive into these numbers and you consider some of the factors that went into these changes, what these changes may be indicating for the future as well. You can really get into a long conversation about where Michigan's population is right now and where we're going to go in the future. And of course, those additional implications that all that data has on things like our representation in government through new systems like the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. Anything else for us today before we let you go, Kurt?
No, and I just appreciate the fact that you see that data are important, and I just feel that we need to look at this information. This is something that is a trend that isn't about to change unless we do something very drastic, and that the state of Michigan and local leaders and others need to start looking at data and trying to understand what does it tell us. What does it tell us about what's going on now? But as you said, particularly, what do we do about the future? These are not trends that are going to change on their own. This is something that Michigan needs to start taking seriously. And again, we need to start taking seriously. Do we need all these independent school districts, communities? We need to start thinking better. How do we govern, and what are we looking toward the future? And this is for Oakland County, but it's for the state as a whole. I think leadership needs to start paying much more attention to these numbers.
Kurt, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanting to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you did. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Whether you're the city,
the county,
or the Huron River Watershed Council.
As partners working together to protect our water resources, we agree.
Pet waste is the source of harmful bacteria in the Huron River.
When it's left on the ground, it can wash into the storm drains.
These lead directly to our streams. No filters, no treatment.
Here's one thing we know that can help keep our water clean.
Pick up pet waste and trash it.
Pick up pet waste and trash it.
So pick up pet waste and trash it.
There's one water, and it's ours to protect.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe. You can learn more about the Michigan Megacast by visiting civiccentertv.com and clicking on our Megacast link, where we have links to every single one of our partnering TV, radio, and web outlets that join us every single day here on the show. Joining us now is Dr. Roberto Rinaldi, the Vice President of Clinical Integration at JVS and Kadima, joining us on the Megacast. Dr. Rinaldi, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate having you on. So, of course, we've had some interviews before with JVS Human Services, but you're with both JVS and with Kadima. Can you tell us a little bit about these two organizations and how they've come together and in some of their services?
Absolutely. So, since about 1941, JVS has assisted thousands of people in Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne County to overcome life challenges, realize their potentials, really working with mental health and developmental disabilities. We now have joined our operations with Kadima in supporting the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Detroit in serving the population in a better and wider range.
And so statistics are showing that 1 in 5 adults in the U.S. In 2020 experienced some sort of mental illness. 1 in 20 experienced some form of severe mental illness. Were these numbers significantly higher or lower before COVID-19? And if so, in either direction, what factor has COVID-19 brought into changing those numbers?
So I honestly think the numbers would probably rise. I think the research is still coming out, looking at what effects and what stressors the pandemic has had on mental health. Over the last few years, I think we've seen an exacerbation of that particular need. I know we had a saturation of needs before the pandemic, and the stressors of the pandemic have just increased that and exacerbated those needs. Our waiting lists have ballooned months into getting treatment. County, agencies are just saturated with wait lists, and some just have stopped taking, patients and clients altogether.
We're joined by Dr. Roberto Rinaldi, joining us on the Megacast. He is the Vice President of Clinical Integration at JVS and Kadima, with us on the show. And so what are some of the barriers that are out there to people setting treatment, both societal barriers that are out there, and insurance barriers certainly are another one to consider, and even on a personal level, physical or mental barriers that may be preventing them from getting these mental health services that they need? Yeah.
So, the barriers are extensive. Let's be honest. And I think the very first one is knowledge. We have, it's a complicated system. And part of what we're doing with some of the programming and some of the webinars that we're hosting is to get that communication out to the community. We want to provide the knowledge for everybody in order to understand the process, understand the barriers that are out there, and in order to get the assistance that they need. The fact is that each county has an agency in order to provide these services, and most people don't even know what those agencies are. Barriers have exacerbated. I mean, meeting face to face with clients and individuals, doing it on Zoom, phone calls, community-based programs that are based on individuals being out in the community are hard to do, especially in light of a pandemic. So the barriers were always there: financial barriers, Medicaid, Medicare, getting those services, being eligible for those services. The process of getting all of the paperwork and going through that can be a very difficult and daunting task, as well as assessing, right, and being diagnosed properly in order to get the services that are needed for your particular diagnosis.
Dr. Rinaldi, you have a upcoming webinar on Thursday, March 3rd. It'll be from 7 o'clock to about 8:30 p.m. It is entitled Mind Matters. Can you tell us about the Mind Matters webinar, what people can expect to learn from that webinar, and who it is available to?
Yeah, so JVS and Kadima basically are joining forces with the University of Michigan Department of Psychiatry. We'll be hosting a webinar open to the community. It's absolutely free. And basically, we're aiming to help people who are struggling with mental health issues and their families. We want to make sure that we're capturing those caregivers who want more information on how to get medical help, determine, the right therapeutic fits, the right therapeutic interventions, advice on how to get diagnosed. What are the treatment models that are out there, and evidence-based practices that everybody should know about, financial resources. Obviously, that's a big one, and how to advocate for yourself, how to get out there and advocate for your loved ones, and resources available for those caregivers. Caregiving, we know about 8.4 million people are considered to be caregivers in the United States. That's probably going to go up as we know the pandemic. And those are often a forgotten group of individuals, right, that have to help those with the diagnosis through the process as well.
We're joined by Dr. Roberto Rinaldi, Vice President of Clinical Integration at JVS and Kadima, with us on the Megacast. And that's a lot of great information that would be helpful to a lot of people, Dr. Rinaldi. Who is this available to, and how can people, if they want to participate, if they want to take in this webinar on Thursday, March 3rd from 7 to 8:30, how can they participate?
Absolutely. So this is a free interactive webinar. It's open to anybody in the community. It's absolutely free. There is one CEU for licensed social workers, and they can register. Everything is going to be on the webinar's registration page, and that's going to be via the University of Michigan Department of Psychiatry's website.
So in the meantime, as people are addressing how they can even go about getting the mental health services that they may need as they are approaching, of course, March 3rd for the Mind Matters webinar to learn more information kind of across the board and get a look at mental health services in general, and then kind of see what avenues they should be exploring to get themselves or get someone else treatment. As they're working on their mental health at home or in their daily life right now, what are some steps that people can take on a daily basis to kind of keep their mind from going to some of those dark places that it can often go, depending on the circumstances of your life, depending on the circumstances of your day?
Absolutely. So there's some self-help, mindfulness, being in the present and really understanding how you're feeling and what you're going through, reaching out, right? Support systems are absolutely incredibly important, especially with the pandemic and the isolation that we've felt over the past 2 years. There are hotlines out there, Googling hotlines for your particular county in the state of Michigan. Every county is going to have an agency that is out there ready and available to help. Those resources are out there, a simple internet search, right? Reaching out to your, primary care physician is also a good idea. Reaching out to a health professional such as a therapist or a social worker or other agencies out in the community. There are endless amounts of agencies and resources out there. And again, navigating this is not always the easiest thing to do, but this is the start. This is the start of getting that information out there so that people really understand how to get the help that they need and deserve.
We're joined by the Vice President of Clinical Integration at JVS and Kadima, Dr. Roberto Rinaldi, on the Michigan Megacast. You can find this entire interview on demand later on this afternoon on our website, civiccentertv.com, by clicking on our Megacast link. And Dr. Rinaldi, a couple more minutes with you before we'll need to say goodbye today. So JVS and Kadima, the Mind Matters webinar is slated for Thursday, March 3rd, 7 o'clock to 8:30. But there are many other resources through these organizations for those that may be seeking mental health services or other services as well. What are some of those other additional resources that may be helpful to people in the meantime as they're waiting for March 3rd and all throughout the year at any time that they may need some help with their mental health or in another area from these two organizations?
Sure. So, obviously going through the county is number one. Everything flows through the agency that each county has that is dedicated to developmental disabilities and mental health. Going through them is going to be number one. They will then trickle that down to other agencies that are contracted throughout the county in order to provide those services. Calling them, getting the assessment, and getting diagnosed is the most important thing at this particular moment in time. And then as we get that, then we navigate through the system.
Dr. Rinaldi, anything else for us today we haven't discussed, or other points that would be important for our audience to be considering on Mind Matters, on mental health, or on services provided by JVS or Kadima?
Sure. So Mind Matters, what we're really searching for is to help patients, clients, help individuals and their loved ones further understand more about the issues such as treatment that is helping but not helping enough, the benefits, right, about psychotherapy, the role that medicine can play, and some self-care strategies, right, such as mindfulness, in order to get their mood and the way they function to a better place, especially with what we've gone through over the past 2 years. It often takes resilience and knowledge to get to take care of yourself, and that's what we're really hoping here, is to get that message out and to get people to start learning how, in fact, to do that.
Dr. Rinaldi, thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Their Mind Matters webinar will be on March 3rd of this year, 7 o'clock to 8:30 p.m. Anybody can participate. Learn more information by searching JVS and Kadima on the web. That is going to do it for today's edition of the Michigan Megacast. I want to thank everyone that joined us on today's edition of the show for being with us. Shandel Bronstein, the CEO of JARC, Dustin McClellan, the founder and CEO of the Pontiac Community Foundation, Dr. Jamie Taweel from Grand River Medical Associates, Kurt Metzger, the founder of Data Driven Detroit, and of course Dr. Roberto Rinaldi, the Vice President of Clinical Integration at JVS and Kadima, for being with us on today's show. You can learn more information about everywhere that we broadcast live and live to tape, and find all of our full episodes and every single one of our interviews on demand by mid to late afternoon on our broadcast days by visiting civiccentertv.com and clicking on our Megacast link. Also, highly encourage you to go over to our coronavirus page, civiccentertv.com/coronavirus, where we have links to the CDC, the MDHHS, and the Oakland County Health Division's COVID-19 specific web pages. Keep up to date on everything that's going on with the pandemic, and new information as it comes in as well on vaccinations, on the spread of COVID-19, on precautionary tactics, and more. civiccentertv.com/coronavirus. Big thank you as well to our crew, Calvin Brown, our technical director, here with me in the studios each and every day. Jared Clark over there at the offices of My Michigan TV. Jared Clark, it sounded to me like I called him Jerry accidentally. I called him Jared. Jared Clark, our Zoom producer. Larry Nyland, the king of television, our producer, getting all of our guests ready to come on the show and helping us get prepared. And Maddie Mustian out at Master Control, helping us on and off the air. Coming up next on My Michigan TV, it's Steve Lato Live, and then we'll be back tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.